3 perfect days of joy evaporated the moment 3 men in dark suits blocked my doorway, launching me from proposal bliss into a fight for my life against shadowy internal power struggles. I was framed for treason, then rescued by an unknown faction, only to find my only escape route required destroying the evidence and leaving my fiancé behind in a sealed, flooding bunker. The silence in the interrogation room wasn't the peaceful quiet of a library. It was the dead, suffocating silence you hear right before a massive wave crashes. 3 days, 3 perfect, sun-drenched days we'd spent in that little coastal town. My proposal, the ring sliding onto Sarah's finger, the ridiculous, giddy happiness radiating off her like heat from asphalt. We'd celebrated. We'd laughed until our stomachs hurt, planning a future that, 3 days later, felt like a cheap, badly written novel I'd accidentally left on the bus. It started so mundanely. A knock on the door of our rented cottage just as I was making coffee. The good stuff, the artisanal beans Sarah insisted we bring along. I answered it, expecting the property manager or maybe a friendly neighbor. Instead, there were 3 figures in dark, unremarkable suits. They didn't introduce themselves with badges or cheerful smiles. They just stood there, blocking the doorway, their expressions carved from granite. "Mr. Alex Romanov?" one asked, his voice flat, completely devoid of regional accent. "Yes, can I help you?" I tried to sound relaxed, professional. I consult for tech startups, usually dealing with mergers, not men who look like they specialize in making problems disappear. "We need you to come with us, now." Sarah appeared behind me, her brow furrowed, still wearing the oversized t-shirt I'd slept in. "Alex, who is this? What's going on?" The man didn't look at her. He looked right through her, directly at me. "This is a matter of national security, sir. Cooperation is advised." National security. The phrase hit me like a bucket of ice water. My mind raced, cycling through every stupid late-night conversation, every questionable financial transaction I'd ever made. Nothing fit. I was clean. Boringly, almost pathologically clean. I had no skeletons, unless you counted that time in college I accidentally borrowed a professor's parking pass. "I haven't done anything wrong," I stated, maybe a little too loudly. The second man finally moved, stepping slightly to the side, revealing a plain, unmarked black van parked discreetly just beyond the rhododendrons. It looked expensive, anonymous, and utterly terrifying. "That is for the service to determine, Mr. Romanoff. You are coming with us." Sarah grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. "No! Alex, don't go anywhere without a lawyer. I'm calling someone right now." She fumbled for her phone, but the first man moved with astonishing speed, intercepting her with a firm, yet strangely gentle hand on her wrist. "Ma'am, please step back. This will be much easier if you remain calm." The word calm triggered something primal in me. Seeing Sarah, my almost wife, looked genuinely frightened, reduced to a pleading whisper, shattered whatever veneer of politeness I was trying to maintain. I shoved the first man's hand away from her. It wasn't a violent push, but it was a clear boundary crossing. That was my mistake. The moment I touched one of them, the professional demeanor evaporated. They moved in, surrounding me. There was no shouting, no visible struggle, just a horrifyingly efficient process of neutralization. A sharp pressure on my neck, a metallic smell, and the world tilted. The last thing I heard was Sarah screaming my name, a high, piercing sound that echoed in the sudden black void rushing in to consume me. I woke up on a hard metal chair, the kind bolted to the floor. The air was cold, recycled, and smelled faintly of industrial cleaner and old paperwork. The light was a single, humming fluorescent panel overhead that refused to cast shadows, making the small room feel painfully exposed. I was wearing the same clothes, but my wallet, my phone, my watch, everything electronic or containing identification was gone. The door hissed open, and the man who had spoken first walked in, followed by a different, older man whose face was etched with fatigue and cynicism. "Welcome back, Mr. Romanov," the first one said. He pulled up a chair opposite me, leaning forward conspiratorially. "My name is Agent Volkov. This is Director Krestov." Krestov merely stared, his silence louder than any interrogation. "Let's dispense with the pleasantries, Alex," Volkov continued, placing a thin manila folder on the table between us. It wasn't thick enough to hold a lifetime of secrets, but the weight of it felt immense. "We are not with the police. We are conducting an internal inquiry into a breach concerning proprietary defense technology, specifically Project Chimera." Project Chimera. The name meant nothing to me. I work on optimizing logistical software for mid-size shipping firms. My highest-level security clearance is for bank statements. "I don't know what that is," I said, my voice raw. I tried to stretch my neck, and a dull ache reminded me of the sedative. Volkov tapped the folder. "We disagree. We believe you served as a data mule, transferring highly sensitive schematics concerning energy shielding arrays to a hostile foreign entity. The transfer occurred approximately 72 hours ago. 72 hours ago. That was the middle of our second day at the coast. While I was supposedly building sandcastles with Sarah, I was supposedly downloading state secrets? That's insane, I choked out. I was with my fiancé. We were proposing. We spent those 3 days hiking and swimming." Volkov smiled, a genuinely unpleasant expression. "Ah, yes, the trip. A beautiful cover, Alex. Very thorough. We've actually confirmed the proposal. Congratulations, by the way. Beautiful ring." My blood ran cold again. They knew. They had been watching us. Or, more accurately, me. They had monitored my perfect, fragile bubble of happiness. "You've been monitoring my personal life?" I asked, my voice rising dangerously. "We monitor everything relevant to our investigation," Krestov finally spoke, his voice gravelly. "And everything about you, Alex, suggests a deep-cover operative who suddenly decided to retire into domestic bliss. Unfortunately for you, retirement isn't an option when you've handled assets related to Project Chimera." Volkov slid a single photograph across the table. It wasn't a picture of me at the beach. It was a grainy infrared surveillance shot taken in a dimly lit parking garage. In the photo, a shadowy figure, clearly me, judging by the jacket I was wearing, was handing a small, encrypted drive to another man whose face was obscured by shadow and a wide-brimmed hat. The timestamp in the corner read, Tuesday, 11:47 p.m., our first night there. I remembered leaving the cottage briefly, telling Sarah I needed to grab more wine from the only late-night store in town, a 20-minute trip. "This is a fabrication," I whispered, staring at the undeniable evidence of my doppelganger, or perhaps my own disastrous actions. "I don't recognize this person, and that date, I was driving for 40 minutes round trip." Volkov leaned in so close I could smell the mint gum he was chewing. "We know the timeline, Alex. We know the transfer happened during the exact window you claimed to be purchasing Merlot. The only discrepancy is that you were not purchasing Merlot. You were completing your obligation to the network." He let that hang in the air. The network. Organized scheme. Hostile foreign entity. These were the buzzwords of high treason. I was instantly suffocating under the weight of an accusation that carried an enormous sentence, a fate worse than just prison, the kind of lengthy incarceration reserved for those who tamper with national defense secrets. I never saw that drive. I never met that man. If you think I am part of some espionage cell, check my finances. Check my background. I'm a software contractor, I pleaded, the panic finally clawing its way up my throat. Krestov sighed, leaning back and rubbing his temples. "That's the problem, Alex. We did check. Your finances are impeccable. Your background is too clean. You were an anomaly. A ghost profile inserted into the system 4 years ago. You've been clean, loyal, and invisible. Until now. And because you're so clean, we assume you're the best operative they've ever deployed. A final mission to secure your retirement package." Volkov pushed a single piece of paper toward me. It wasn't a confession form. It was a formal request for extradition filed by an agency I vaguely recognized from leaked documents, an intelligence branch known for its ruthlessness and efficiency in retrieving assets or eliminating threats. They weren't interested in a trial. They were interested in retrieval. "They are waiting for you," Volkov stated, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "They want to debrief you immediately. If you cooperate, perhaps we can negotiate the nature of your confinement. If you don't—" He paused, letting the implication fester. "If you don't, you become a liability to everyone, and liabilities are cleaned up quietly." He stood up, looking down at me with an expression that suggested he already knew the answer. "So, Alex, 3 happy days lost. Do you want the endless tunnel of fear and despair to start with silence? Or do you want to tell us exactly who recruited you, where the primary server is, and what happens to your fiancée if we don't believe your story about her?" He looked towards the door, waiting for my response. But before I could force a denial, the door burst open again, not silently this time, but with a violent crash that rattled the pipes overhead. 3 new figures, heavily armed, moving with tactical precision, flooded the room. They weren't Volkov's people. Their uniforms were different, bearing insignia I didn't recognize, but the intent was unmistakable. They looked dangerous, and they were pointing their weapons directly at Volkov and Krestov. "This facility is under emergency quarantine," a sharp voice barked over the sudden chaos. "All personnel evacuate or be detained. Asset Romanov is under the jurisdiction of the Directorate of Strategic Oversight." Volkov went rigid, snatching the manila folder. "What the hell is this? Who authorized a seizure?" Before anyone could answer, one of the newcomers slammed the butt of his weapon into Krestov's temple, dropping the director instantly. Then the leader turned to me, a cold glint in his eye. "Mr. Romanov," he said, his voice calm amidst the escalating tension, "we are here to escort you. Your planned rendezvous has been compromised. Tell me, did you manage to wipe the local drive before you left the cottage, or is the original data still on the premises?" The air in the interrogation room, already thick with fear, instantly crackled with a new, aggressive energy. The confrontation between Volkov's security detail, who looked suddenly very outmatched, and these new intruders was unfolding in terrifying slow motion. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat in the sudden gunfire that erupted down the hall, signaling that this facility was far from secure. The tactical leader, the one who had spoken, didn't wait for my answer about the drive. He grabbed my arm with incredible force, pulling me out of the chair. My head spun, not just from the abrupt movement, but from the realization that I was now caught between 2 highly motivated, heavily armed factions, both of whom believed I held the keys to national security. "Where is the drive, citizen?" the leader repeated, shoving me toward a side exit I hadn't noticed before, a heavy steel door marked with hazard symbols. "Answer now, or we treat you as hostile evidence." "There is no drive. I told everyone. I was making coffee, then looking for wine," I yelled, stumbling to keep up. The confusion was my only shield. If I seemed truly bewildered, perhaps they wouldn't shoot me immediately. Volkov, surprisingly agile for a desk agent, darted toward the main door, shouting into a radio strapped to his shoulder. "This is an unauthorized incursion. Seal Sector Gamma. We have a breach by oversight personnel." The tactical leader, I mentally dubbed him the commander, didn't even flinch at Volkov's threat. He leveled his weapon not at Volkov, but at one of Volkov's bewildered guards, firing a single, muffled shot that brought the man down without making much noise, suggesting specialized, non-lethal rounds, or perhaps something much worse designed for quick incapacitation. "Oversight has seized control, Volkov. Your jurisdiction is over. You can join your director, or you can step aside," the commander said, his voice cutting through the commotion. The commander dragged me through the side door, which hissed shut behind us, plunging us into near darkness broken only by red emergency lighting. We were in a narrow corridor, echoing with the sound of distant alarms and the muffled exchange of gunfire. The metallic tang of cleaner was replaced by something acrid, like ozone or burned electronics. "My name is Commander Rorik," he hissed, propelling me forward down the cramped hallway. "You are being extracted. You are now under our protection, Mr. Romanoff. However, protection comes with terms." "Terms," I gasped, trying to keep my footing on the slick floor. "I don't want protection. I want Sarah. I want my life back. What is Project Chimera? I swear I don't know anything." Rorik stopped abruptly, jamming me against the cold wall. He leaned in, his face inches from mine. He wasn't angry. He was terrifyingly focused, like a predator assessing prey. "Your life is over, Alex. That illusion ended when you agreed to the initial handoff. Whether you remember agreeing to it or whether you were successfully coerced into forgetting is immaterial now. The people who set you up, the agency you were working for, they failed to secure you properly. Now we have you." "But I wasn't working for anyone." "Stop lying." Rorik slammed his palm against the wall beside my head. "We tracked the initial digital signature associated with the Chimera data package. It didn't come from a hostile nation-state, Alex. It came from inside the structure you think employs you. Volkov's group, the Internal Security Directorate, they were staging a coup using your fabricated identity as the scapegoat. They needed someone disposable to take the fall for stealing state secrets, allowing them to consolidate power while blaming a foreign threat." My mind reeled. I wasn't a spy working for an enemy. I was a pawn in an internal power struggle. The 3 happy days were the perfect cover for my disappearance after I'd been unwittingly activated as the fall guy. "So, I'm not a traitor?" I asked, a sliver of desperate hope piercing through the terror. "You are a victim of political maneuvering," Rorik confirmed, his tone shifting slightly, almost professionally sympathetic. "However, that doesn't absolve you of the danger. They planted the data on you. Volkov's people were about to make you confess to aiding a foreign adversary. We intervened before they could break you too thoroughly." He pulled a sleek, dark device from his belt. It looked like a heavily modified tablet, and quickly typed something in. A map appeared on the screen, showing the underground complex we were in. Several red dots pulsed menacingly around our position. "The Directorate knows we took you. They are mobilizing their rapid response team. We have maybe 4 minutes to get you to the extraction point before they lock down this entire level. You need to trust me completely now, Alex. If you stall, if you question me, we will both end up in the same concrete box Volkov promised you." He pointed down the corridor toward a maintenance shaft entrance. "That leads to the lower service tunnels. We move fast. No questions about who we are or what directorate we serve. Just run when I say run and follow my lead when I tell you to stop." I nodded mutely, my throat too tight for words. The 3 days of stolen happiness, the proposal, the sunshine. It felt like a cruel, distant dream already crumbling under the pressure of this subterranean reality. "What about Sarah?" I managed to croak out. "You said you monitored everything. You know where she is." Rorik paused, his thumb hovering over the map interface. For the first time, Rorik's expression flickered, revealing something far more complicated than simple duty. He glanced back toward the direction of the interrogation rooms where Volkov had been. "Sarah is safe," Rorik stated, but his eyes didn't meet mine. "She was flagged immediately upon your apprehension and relocated to a secure off-grid location managed by our intelligence division. She is safe as long as you cooperate." That sounded reassuring, but Rorik's hesitation was a massive red flag. Safe, but detained? A hostage, essentially? "What does that mean, safe?" I demanded, gripping the collar of his uniform jacket this time. "Is she being questioned? Is she in danger?" Rorik shoved me away, his professional facade snapping back into place. "It means she is out of the line of fire for now. If you want her to remain untouched, you will provide us with the location of the primary data cache you were supposed to access after the transfer. The Directorate knows you had a secondary directive, Alex. The Directorate needs to know who you were planning to hand the real intelligence over to." He took a deep breath, his eyes darting to the corridor ahead. "The Directorate believes you are working for them now, the true internal threat, because the Directorate is trying to frame you for aiding an external party. We, however, know you are simply a corrupted asset. We just need the proof that you were double-crossing everyone." Rorik suddenly pointed toward the maintenance shaft. "Go! Now!" I scrambled toward the opening, dropping to my knees to squeeze into the cramped shaft. Rorik followed instantly, pulling a heavy metal grate over the opening. Just as the grate clanged into place, heavy boots pounded into the corridor above us, followed by aggressive shouting and the unmistakable sound of sophisticated breaching charges being set against the steel door we had just passed through. "They're on us," Rorik grunted, shining his weak tactical light down the ladder. "Move, Romanoff! Climb! Faster!" I started climbing the cold metal rungs, adrenaline burning away the sedative fog. I looked down at Rorik, who was checking his own weapon, when suddenly a blinding white light flared from the hatch above us, accompanied by a deafening sound. Not a gunshot, but a high-pitched, focused sonic blast designed to incapacitate. Rorik screamed, clutching his head, his weapon clattering down the shaft toward me. I caught the weapon reflexively, the cold metal surprisingly heavy in my suddenly sweat-slicked hand. Just as Rorik's grip failed, and he tumbled backward, hitting the floor of the access corridor with a sickening thud, lying completely still in the glare of the intruder's light. I was alone, trapped in a narrow, dark tunnel, holding a specialized weapon I didn't know how to use, while the faction that had just rescued me was lying unconscious or worse, and the faction that had been torturing me moments before was about to breach the hatch above my head, ready to execute me on sight. The weight of Rorik's weapon felt alien and dangerous in my hand. It was heavier, more intricate than the sleek black pistol Volkov had been carrying. The high-pitched whine from the corridor above finally died away, replaced by the sound of splintering metal as the Directorate breached the maintenance hatch with brutal force. I flattened myself against the ladder, barely breathing, listening to the heavy thud of tactical boots scraping against the metal frame above. They were searching, methodically sweeping the corridor, their helmet lights cutting sharp, invasive beams into the darkness. "Check the shaft, scan for heat signatures," a clipped voice ordered from directly above me. My mind screamed for control. I had no idea how to fire this weapon, how to aim it, or what kind of ammunition it even contained. But I knew one thing. If they found me here, Rorik's failed rescue attempt would be the least of my problems. They'd assume I killed him and take immediate lethal action. The thought of Sarah, held somewhere by a different shadowy group because of my supposed betrayal, galvanized me. I had to move. I didn't dare try to climb further up. Instead, I slowly, painstakingly began to descend the rungs, hoping the low-level emergency lighting inside the shaft wouldn't cast a noticeable shadow on the walls below. The metal groaned under my slight weight, a noise that seemed deafening in the tense silence. "Nothing on the thermal sweep in the immediate vicinity," came a report from the ladder's top. "Likely bypassed into the lower infrastructure. Check the service tunnels below the access point." They hadn't spotted the heavy grate Rorik had pulled over the top. They were looking down the main shaft, assuming any sensible person would try to climb out. They weren't expecting someone to scramble deeper into the bowels of the facility. As I reached the bottom rung, my foot touched solid ground, a filthy, tiled floor. I crouched low, pulling Rorik's weapon up, trying to find the safety catch, or maybe just a power switch. There was a small, almost invisible trigger guard that had to be depressed before the main trigger could be pulled. I fumbled, my fingers trembling violently. I was in what appeared to be an abandoned utility room, Pipes thick as my torso crisscrossed the ceiling, dripping condensation. The air here was stagnant and smelled strongly of mildew and something acrid, perhaps remnants of whatever sonic device they had used on Rorik. Ahead of me, there were 3 large access tunnels leading away from the utility room, numbered 301, 302, and 303. Tunnel 301 seemed slightly cleaner, suggesting recent use. I heard the muffled sound of the directorate team dropping into the utility room above. They had found the closed grate and were now working to pry it open, a far louder, more aggressive process than the quiet entry Volkov's men had managed. 30 seconds until hatch breach. Prepare to engage, the leader shouted. I didn't have 30 seconds. I made the decision based purely on instinct and the slim chance that the cleaner tunnel meant a faster way out. Tunnel 301. I lunged for the opening, clutching Rorik's strange weapon. Just as I reached the threshold, I accidentally brushed the trigger mechanism. There was a low, almost inaudible thwump, followed by a brief, intense flash of blue light that vanished almost instantly. It didn't make a loud noise, but it illuminated the tunnel ahead of me with startling clarity. And what it illuminated froze me dead in my tracks. Tunnel 301 wasn't empty. It was lined with racks upon racks of sophisticated electronic equipment, servers humming quietly, their indicator lights blinking in rhythmic patterns. This wasn't a service tunnel. It was a server farm, deep underground, completely disconnected from the facility above. And nestled among the blinking monoliths of data, there were several crates, standard issue, sealed with heavy-duty clasps. These weren't wine crates, and sitting on top of the nearest crate, looking directly at me, utterly unfazed by the sonic blast or the sounds of the directorate team breaching the hatch above, was a woman. She was middle-aged, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal gray suit, her silver hair pulled back severely. She was holding a cup of tea, steam curling gracefully from the rim, and she didn't look like a spy, a security agent, or a victim. She looked like a CEO waiting for a delayed quarterly report. "Took you long enough, Alex," she said, her voice perfectly modulated, carrying easily across the small space. She took a slow sip of her tea, her eyes never leaving mine. I was beginning to think Volkov's little performance had been too convincing. "Welcome to the true center of operations. I assume you've retrieved the hardware we discussed?" She gestured vaguely toward the crates, and then she looked past me, toward the sound of the rapidly deteriorating hatch above. "Unfortunately, it seems we have some unexpected guests attempting a hostile takeover of the proxy operation. That would be the directorate, attempting to clean up their mess by eliminating everyone who knows about their plan to use you as a scapegoat." She placed her teacup carefully on a server casing. She wasn't afraid of the incoming armed agents. She was annoyed by the interruption. "You have a choice, Mr. Romanov," she continued, standing up smoothly. "You can surrender to the directorate, plead ignorance, and face an enormous sentence for treason, which they will happily enforce to cover their tracks. Or you can open those crates for me. They contain the real Chimera data, the data you were supposed to upload when you bought wine. And you need to do it before they blast through that access door, because they will shoot you on sight for possessing Rorik's specialized hardware." She nodded toward the weapon in my hand. "Now, Alex, which network do you choose to serve? The one that framed you, or the one that has been waiting for you to complete your mission?" As if on cue, the metal grate above us ripped away with a screech, and the first blinding tactical light flooded the utility room, pinning me in its glare, standing directly in front of a mysterious woman next to crates of world-altering secrets, holding an advanced weapon, with the directorate agents already deploying flashbangs into the space behind me. The flashbang detonated with a silent, searing brilliance that bleached the world white. Even though I was half-crouched in the darkness of Tunnel 301, the concussion slammed into my chest, stealing my breath and replacing my vision with swimming purple spots. I heard the sickening, immediate shouts of the directorate agents. Not tactical commands this time, but cries of pain and disorientation. I squeezed my eyes shut, instinctively raising Rorik's weapon. The small, specialized firearm felt impossibly heavy, a useless anchor in the chaos. The woman in the charcoal suit, however, remained utterly unfazed. She had anticipated this, moving with practiced grace to shield her face with one arm while simultaneously retrieving a small, dark device from her jacket pocket. When my vision slowly began to clear, revealing the flickering red and green lights of the server racks, I saw the Directorate agents struggling to recover. 2 were down, clutching their helmets, but the commander, the one who had given me the frantic escape instructions, was already on his feet, his posture tense but determined. He had clearly expected countermeasures. "Seal the tunnel entrances. No one leaves this sector," the commander bellowed, regaining his bearings with terrifying speed. He spotted me first, framed against the faint light of the utility room, and then his gaze locked onto the woman standing beside the crates. "Ma'am, step away from the asset. You are interfering with a high-priority internal investigation." The woman smiled, a thin, reptilian expression that did not reach her eyes. "Directorate interference is precisely what we anticipated, Commander. You are too late to clean up your mess. The asset is already transitioning to his primary objective." She turned to me, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial level that barely cut through the rising sound of approaching footsteps from the main corridor. "Alex, the crates, now. I need that interface key downloaded before they decide you're too compromised to be useful and neutralize you both." My mind was a hurricane of conflicting loyalties. Volkov wanted me framed for treason against the nation. Rorik wanted me for some unseen internal purge. Now, this woman, who seemed to be the original architect of the entire operation, wanted me to open the real data caches. If I obeyed her, I might finally understand what Project Chimera actually was, and perhaps find the key to Sarah's freedom. If I obeyed the Directorate, I was signing up for decades in a black site. I lifted Rorik's weapon, pointing it shakily toward the nearest crate. It felt like aiming a cannon. "What is the interface key?" I asked, my voice raspy. "It's the ring," she replied simply, nodding toward my left hand. "The engagement ring you gave Sarah. It's not jewelry, Alex. It's the encryption bypass for the Chimera core servers. The Directorate thinks they're hunting digital data. They never thought to look at the sentimental object you cherished most." The ring, the symbol of my stolen happiness, now revealed as the ultimate master key. I stared at the diamond glittering under the emergency lights, a tangible connection to the life I was fighting for. The commander in the corridor realized the danger. He understood the implication of the ring, perhaps recognizing the woman's network from past failures. "Do not touch that asset. It is considered compromised evidence," the commander roared, raising his rifle. "Last warning, madam. Stand down." The woman ignored him completely. "Take the ring off, Alex. Insert it into the port on the 3rd crate from the left. Hurry." I obeyed instantly, pulling the ring off my finger. The cold metal felt suddenly heavy with significance. As I moved toward the crate, the commander fired. The shot was precise, meant to disable, not kill, aimed at my leg. But as the bullet streaked toward me, the woman acted. She didn't use a weapon. She slammed her hand down on the dark device she held, and suddenly the air around the bullet shimmered. It wasn't a solid shield. It looked like heat distortion on a summer road, but it was instantaneous. The bullet struck the distortion field, not with a loud impact, but with a muted, dull thunk, and then fell harmlessly to the tiled floor, flattened and inert. "We call it localized kinetic dampening," the woman explained calmly, her eyes gleaming with proprietary pride. Far superior to whatever crude technology Volkov was using. She gestured sharply at the crate. My hands shaking less now, fueled by adrenaline and the insane reality of the situation, I found the small, almost invisible indentation on the crate's side, a tiny slot perfectly sized for a ring setting. I pushed the diamond end of the engagement ring into the slot. A soft click resonated through the room, and the crate hissed open, revealing not more hardware, but a single, antique-looking, leather-bound journal resting on velvet. "The real chimera," the woman breathed, looking satisfied. "The data is in the margin notes. Transfer the contents to your personal cloud, your standard backup protocol. Now!" I pulled out my now-recovered phone from my pocket. Volkov must have returned it when he thought I was cooperating. The phone felt like a lifeline. I flipped the journal open to a random page, dense, handwritten equations and sketches, and held the phone's camera over it. As the camera focused, the Directorate commander let out a frustrated yell. He clearly realized that opening that crate meant the data was already moving. He abandoned caution, fired a full burst toward the woman. She raised her dampening field again, but this time the sheer volume of fire seemed to overwhelm the technology. The air warped violently, and the first bullet ripped through the field, striking the woman high in the shoulder. She cried out, dropping her device, and stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of servers. The impact caused a cascade failure. Lights flickered, alarms blared, not emergency sirens, but system failure warnings, and the entire server farm went suddenly, terrifyingly dark. The roar of the Directorate commander shouting orders in the darkness was deafening, but now there was a new sound, the slow, heavy hiss of steam escaping ruptured pipes in the ceiling. "Alex," the woman gasped, clutching her bleeding shoulder, stumbling blindly toward me. "The fire suppression system is activating. They rigged the core to overload if breached. Get the journal out. Get to the primary egress. The tunnels will flood." I looked down at my phone. The transfer bar was stuck at 98%, 1% away from everything. I clutched the antique journal, the ring still jammed in the crate slot, and looked wildly around the now pitch-black room, hearing the commander's heavy boots charging toward the very spot where the woman had fallen. I had the key, the evidence, and I was trapped in a rapidly flooding, dark sub-level bunker, pursued by the only people who knew I existed. I yanked the journal free, leaving the ring behind, and dove blindly toward the only direction I thought led away from the incoming soldiers, Tunnel 302. The moment I plunged into the darkness of Tunnel 302, the world dissolved into chaos. The hissing of the activated fire suppression system, some inert gas designed to suffocate any electrical fire, was immediately drowned out by the sound of rushing water. The Directorate had gambled on overwhelming the environment, and they were winning. Water began pouring from ruptured pipes overhead, not a gentle drip, but torrents that turned the floor slick instantly. I scrambled forward, the leather-bound journal clutched against my chest, the cold, dead weight of Rorik's strange weapon, a heavy burden in my other hand. I risked one glance back. The beam of the commander's tactical light stabbed wildly into the utility room, illuminating the fallen woman now struggling weakly against the encroaching white mist of the suppression gas. The commander didn't stop to secure her. He charged toward the source of the ongoing threat, me. "Romanov, halt! You are trespassing on a restricted sovereign asset retrieval site." His voice was distorted by the chaos, but the intent was clear. I was the last loose thread in their entire political maneuver, and they intended to tie it off permanently. I ran harder than I ever thought possible, the dampening effect of the sonic blast on my equilibrium making every step a near fall. Tunnel 302 was narrower, older, and smelled overwhelmingly of sewage and stagnant earth. It seemed to lead downward, away from the controlled facility levels. This was not the clean exit Rorik had planned. This was a drain pipe. I fumbled for my phone, the single piece of personal belonging that might save me. My fingers, clumsy from adrenaline, finally located the screen. The transfer bar was still frozen at 98%. The system failure in the server room had halted the upload. 98% of my salvation dangling just out of reach. Suddenly, a noise behind me wasn't the commander's heavy boots, but a faint, rapid splashing. It was lighter, more agile. Alex, stop! The voice was familiar, strained, but undeniably Sarah's. I skidded to a halt, nearly dropping the journal into a rising pool of murky water. Sarah? What? How? She burst into view from the entrance of Tunnel 302, looking pale and terrified but moving with surprising speed. She was wearing simple athletic clothes, the same ones she'd worn on our hiking trip, and she was carrying nothing but a small, flat silver key card clutched in her hand. "Rorik," she gasped, leaning against the tunnel wall, panting heavily. "Rorik wasn't a threat to you. He was working for me. The directorate seized him, but he managed to call me before they cut his comms. He told me where to find the failsafe key." My entire reality fractured again. Rorik, the stern agent, was actually allied with Sarah? And Sarah had a failsafe key? The key card. He said if you couldn't upload the data, use this to override the system's primary lock and flush the evidence, she pleaded, thrusting the card toward me. Behind us, the commander burst into Tunnel 302, his face grim in the red emergency glow filtering down from the breached hatch. He saw Sarah, and his eyes narrowed with dangerous recognition. "The fiancé, a sleeper asset. You both will be detained immediately," he shouted, leveling his weapon, no longer concerned with non-lethal force. "It's a distraction, Alex. The lock is near the junction," Sarah screamed, shoving me forward. I didn't hesitate this time. The ring was gone, the data incomplete. If the directorate captured us, Sarah would be interrogated, broken, and then disappeared. The only chance was to destroy everything. I jammed the keycard into a small recessed panel marked with a faded symbol near the floor of the tunnel junction. The card slid in easily. I twisted it hard, following an instinct born of pure desperation. A heavy mechanical clunk echoed through the tunnel system, instantly silencing the alarms and the sound of the water. The rush of water stopped as if a massive subterranean valve had slammed shut. The emergency red lights died, plunging the tunnel into absolute, suffocating blackness. Then, silence. A profound, heavy, terrifying silence, deeper and more absolute than the interrogation room. I waited, frozen, my heart ready to explode. Had I just triggered an environmental collapse? After what felt like an eternity, a single faint beam of light pierced the darkness. It wasn't the harsh beam of a tactical lamp, but the soft, clean light of an everyday smartphone. It was Sarah's light, held steady only a few feet away. "Alex," she whispered. "I'm here," I breathed, realizing I was still clutching the journal and Rorik's strange, heavy firearm. "The commander, he's gone," she said, her voice shaking, but laced with disbelief and relief. "The system didn't collapse. It locked down every single door, every passage, and purged the air system. It just sealed itself off." I looked at the journal in my hands. The transfer had failed at 98%, but the journal itself, the handwritten source material, was real. "The data is here," I said, clutching the book. "It's not digital, it's physical. And now we're locked in a tomb with the evidence." Sarah moved closer, her light illuminating my face. She saw the weapon, the journal, the terror in my eyes. "We're not in a tomb, Alex," she said, her voice suddenly stealing with a resolve I hadn't heard before. She pointed the phone light further down Tunnel 302, where the tunnel seemed to curve sharply away from the facility. "Rorik told me that when the failsafe activates, it opens a secondary emergency maintenance route, one only known to the deepest oversight teams. It leads out to the old coastal railway maintenance spur." She looked at me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw not just the loving woman who accepted my proposal, but the capable operative Rorik had clearly trusted with the final contingency. The directorate is sealed in that level, unable to pursue us, and Volkov's team is probably either captured or dead in the upper complex. We have the evidence, Alex. We have the path out. The endless tunnel of fear is over. Now we just have to walk through the dark.